The Iron Fist goes into the final fight, the boss fight, the
Yes.
end of the season fight.
The finale.
Fists roaring. It's time. It's time for him to start slugging some bad guys, and he's gonna
And, he,
fight.
and he's using the Iron Fists. Yes?
He's using the Iron Fist, and you've seen the bad guy like punching a punching bag and virtually nothing else. But you're assuming that because he's hitting a punching bag, that he has to be able to fight somewhat.
Sure. Well, he is the villain. I mean, if it wouldn't be a very good fight if he just, like, started crying and was like, I give up.
Yeah, so this is about where I was. This is about where I became convinced that Marvel was trolling me personally.
Okay.
Like not a group of similar-minded people.
But you personally.
Me personally.
Sure.
The bad guy is fighting with a gun.
You could do that.
Yeah, if this was Equilibrium or some crap like that, but that's not how it was going down. It was the Iron Fist hiding behind things, getting shot at.
And waiting for his opponent to run out of ammunition, or...
I mean, I guess, but like, then they end up squaring off for just as I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly. I feel like at one point he punches a bullet with the Iron Fist to deflect it. I'm not sure. Maybe I just made that up because I thought it would be cool, and they didn't actually do anything cool. So I hallucinated that. I'm really not sure, but I think something like that happened. But
okay, fair enough.
Eventually, they get into close quarters combat. The fight doesn't last for very long, and it's not a very impressive fight. I mean, it has nothing on the fight with the kung fu guy from earlier.
Yeah.
So it's like nothing really important happens, and then there's still a gun involved somehow. But then that brother that I mentioned shows up at the end of the show.
Yeah.
He's the one that beats the bad guy.
What?
It's the Iron Fist was...
Do they have... Oh, hold on. Do they have, like, a really cool climactic gun battle that like, is, like, so awesome that you're like, okay, this isn't the kung fu fight I was hoping for, but this'll do. That's what happens, right?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
From what I'm remembering, it was very unceremonious. Like, something was going to happen, and the brother just had to show up and finish off the bad guy. I don't even remember how it went down because it was so boring and such a horrible way to end a show. Like, it would have been better if they had ended it like Luke Cage, where it's just like, after all this time, the guy that was the bad guy says, you know what, I'm just going to put on a super suit and show up and fight Luke Cage for no reason. And they get one big... I mean, it was a better fight scene. The guy whose character is, I'm bulletproof and really strong, and I basically just slug people in a fight, had a better fight scene than the Iron Fist.
I see.
It's pathetic.
Yeah, it sounds
I don't know
pretty
how
bad.
else to put it. And that's how the first season ends, and I talked about that way longer than I wanted to, so let's go ahead and roll into the second season.
Okay.
So you remember the sidekick character that I mentioned? She used to be a member of the Hand, and now she's not.
She's been unbrainwashed or re-brainwashed or something?
Yeah, so they bring her to the forefront in the second season, as if she wasn't enough in the first one. And then they've got all these side characters from the other shows, like the cop from Luke Cage is in it now, and they start actively looking for ways to take Iron Fist out of the show.
What do you mean?
Like everyone else becomes a more important character to the show than Iron Fist.
But that... Okay, you're going to need to give me a little more explanation to that, because it just sounds like... sounds like you're hallucinating.
So, the beginning of the second season, he stops an armed robbery. But this has...
Iron Fist does.
Yes. And,
Okay.
and he does so not by... Like, I think they wanted to try and make you feel like there were going to be more and better fight scenes in the second season. And maybe you could say that what little there was a bit better.
Yeah.
But it was like... It was one of those things where you're watching and you're like, they heard a lot of people complain about the fight scenes, and this was their desperate attempt to try and say, well, we're doing something about that. Like I think the best example of that was when one of his fellow monks from the city shows up. And by the way, at the end of the first season, the city that he was sworn to protect is destroyed and just gone. And so that motivates the villain of the next season his brother from the monastery shows up, and he's angry that the Iron Fist didn't use his power to protect the city of Kunlun.
Did he know that it was under attack?
No, but the thing was, everyone was angry that he left the city because he was supposed to stay there and be their protector, and so.
Oh.
Then that happens, and this other guy is like, okay, well, you're a chump, but they have a scene where they're like both together, and he's telling him what he thinks about him, and they start talking about their kung fu philosophy, and they make like one or two faux attacks at each other, and they're trying to show that like Iron Fist is actually really quick with his hands, and he can catch a punch that someone's throwing at him, and they do a couple of exchanges like that where they're basically just showing off that they're both still good at kung fu to each other. Mm-hmm. So it's like they're trying to impress upon you that the Iron Fist is good at fighting, but the scenes are still bad. Like he opens up stopping an armed robbery by punching an armored car, and then a bunch of guys attack him with guns, and he gets surrounded. And so you're like, okay, well, if they've got guns, so this isn't going to turn into a kung fu fight, so what's going to happen? So instead they have him punch the ground, Matrix style, and knock everyone into the air with his Iron Fist. So now the character he's kind of like... Iron Fist is supposed to be this progressive equality type of character. And, he's fighting for... to improve people's lives and make things better for everyone, and there's all this nonsense about community centers and helping out people who can't help themselves, and stuff like that. That's his character. He's basically like, I don't know. I can't think of a good example. Everyone's so far gone in that direction now that you can't like find a good person to say he's like this person, because then you think, oh wait, no, because this person would be cool if like Antifa showed up and started beating people with baseball bats, and I'm pretty sure the Iron Fist wouldn't be cool with that.
Okay, so he's not completely gone.
Yeah, he's not a social justice warrior, but he's like very progressive leaning in his ideology. So he's already destroying property in the middle of the road. He creates a crater in the middle of a New York road that has no traffic on it for some reason. And
that's how we know this is a work of fiction.
Yes, exactly. There are so many streets that are empty in Iron Fist. It's unbelievable.
Did it happen after New York got destroyed in one of the Avengers movies or something?
Well, I mean, you're supposed to believe that, but everything in New York looks just fine in all of these shows, so whatever. And before I go on, I just want to say that if you watch all of the Netflix Marvel shows from like in order, you can kind of pretend that like you watch them and pretend that they had the same writer for every single one. Mm-hmm. And you can like visualize someone's descent into madness, like not madness, but like some kind of like you're watching a dementia patient fall into the deep end of dementia right before your eyes, because Daredevil had such wonderful, great choreographed fighting scenes. And then the second Daredevil did too. There weren't really any fighting scenes in Jessica Jones that mattered that much. But then like Luke Cage had a couple of okay ones, and then like you got to Defenders where you had all the characters together and suddenly there weren't any good fight scenes. And then Iron Fist had, I don't know if we can call it fighting at all. And then season 2, it's just like they're not really bothering. Their way of solving the problem of him not being able to fight is to just focus more on people getting thrown across rooms and not really engaging in choreographed fighting so much as slugging it out and throwing someone into a wall with the Iron Fist. So now he's...
So the fights are all slugfests, basically, is what you're saying.
Pretty much. And I think that if the fight scene at the end of the first season wasn't enough to make me think that Marvel was singling me out to troll, there was this flashback scene that happened over the course of like 2 episodes, I think, where it's like they kept cutting back to Iron Fist having the deciding fight with the bad guy that shows up from the monastery for that season. because those were the last two. They were fighting over who was going to be the Iron Fist back at the monastery, and they're flashing back to this scene. And there's so much to hate about it. First off, they're wearing the Iron Fist mask, so I guess that's a thing from the temple. It's not his own personal thing.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know anything about the lore of Iron Fist, so maybe that's the case in the comics too. But they're wearing these masks over their eyes, and I'm watching this and I'm like, I don't know if they're using stunt actors. They could use stunt actors here, but I don't know if they are. But they've got masks on, so maybe. And like, they cut to this scene, and I'm like, okay, fine. They put together one good fight scene. They're going to give me one good fight scene at the very least, because they're doing this flashback thing. The fight goes for 30 seconds or so after they explain what the fight is. You know, they got the whole big temple scene where everyone's like, this is what you're going to do, and whoever wins this is going to be the Iron Fist.
The Iron Fist, yeah.
And then they fight for like, maybe not even 30 seconds, and they cut back to the present. And I'm like, wait. And like, I knew in my head what they were going to do, and I was like, but they're not really going to do that, right? They're just, that's it, we're done with that, right? Because you can't tell me that this is how they're going to handle this. You can't tell me they're going to slap me in the face like this. So they cut back to that like 4 times throughout the episode, and like each time they gave you a little piece of like, and it wasn't even good fighting. It was like, it wasn't the worst fighting in the show. But it still wasn't very well choreographed fighting. And whenever it looked like it was going to get good, one of the characters would like fly into a rage and just become like a bar brawler. And then they would cut away and they'd come back to it, and it would just, you would have to fill it in your head that there was a fight that had taken place, because they had more blood on them each time. And I'm just like, so we missed the cool stuff, and then we get to see him punch the other guy in the face 3 times, and then the guy gets angry and rips this cord that they're holding onto for no reason, like it's some kind of WWE rope match. Where,
is it possible that one of the actors that is doing this fight is an animal, and the ASPCA wouldn't let them show any actual violence against one of these guys?
I mean, no. I mean, they were clearly human. And the funny thing was, when I first had the thought that maybe they're stunt actors, I simultaneously had the thought, but boy, that's really pathetic. Because it was just not a good fight. And I seriously think that the intention of them cutting back and forth with it continuously was not to, over the course of one episode, develop that story into one point to finish up at the end and then let you continue on. I seriously think that it was just such a bad fight scene that that's how they decided to edit it into the story. Because if you watched it all together...
Like it was just really bad, and so they hid the fact that it was bad by cutting in and out of it so that you got disoriented.
Well, hid the fact that it was bad poorly.
Also, yes, but attempted to hide the fact that it was bad.
So now the show is actively aware that the fight scenes are horrible and they're not going to fix it. They're just going to try and cover it up.
That's awesome.
There's got to be like can we call this Iron Gate or something? Like, I don't know.
I don't think it needs a nickname. I mean, the show is the show, and I think that it's pretty clear that it's bad.
And that's like in the first 4 episodes. Like again, the show was actively staying away from him doing anything for a large portion of the show. Like,
was the temple like a is he supposed to be an ascetic or like a meditative person, or is it just a kung fu temple?
More. I think it's a mix of a lot of things, but I don't know enough about the comic part, and the show doesn't explain it enough. The shows have gotten a lot worse about you not only having to know stuff that has happened in the other shows. Well, like, if you were just to sit down and watch Iron Fist Part 2, you'd just be like, who the heck are all these other characters? Like, who is this cop woman? What is she doing here? You had to have watched Luke Cage to understand who she was.
Who she is.
And she just shows up and starts talking like, yeah, I'm part of the crew. And you're like, what? Who? Go away. And then not only that, but this woman shows up and she actively starts taking the role of the main character away from Iron Fist. Between her and Iron Fist's sidekick / girlfriend, who they not only had more fight scenes than Iron Fist, better choreographed than Iron Fist, but they had longer fight scenes than Iron Fist, and they fought more of the big villains than Iron Fist. And then the show could not keep clear who was a bad guy and who was a good guy. And again, they've got this brother character who is now buddy with Iron Fist. He's like, they're cool now. He's like, I'm in rehab, I'm getting help, and he still keeps doing these things where it's like he kind of has an attitude problem to get over, and you're watching it and you're like, well, he's developing character and he's actively trying to get better as a person, and he's still doing some of the things that make him a bad person. But he's trying to stop doing that, and he's trying to make amends with his sister who found out about the dead father and wasn't happy about it.
Right.
And then his sister is like with the bad guy now, the bad guy from the monastery. And so she's the bad guy now, except she isn't, because at first they're like, oh yeah, she's helping him do this thing to where he's going to be able to steal the power of the Iron Fist from Iron Fist. And oh my god, this is where it gets really, really out of control. This is the spiral into oblivion for this show. But like the sister is trying to get revenge basically on Danny Rand, the Iron Fist, and her brother for hiding the fact about her father being alive.
But wait, did the Iron Fist have anything to do with that?
Well, she blames Danny Rand for coming back, and basically his coming back caused all of the events that ruined her life, as she put it, which doesn't make any sense because she's still got money to burn. She's still a rich executive. She's trying to start her own business. She's got a brother who wants forgiveness from her, from hiding her murderous creep of a father from her and protecting her from him. And he's doing everything in his power just to get her to say that she forgives him. And it's kind of funny because at some point you're watching the show and you're just like, this is exactly what happens when the social justice streak in media completely takes over a show. Like, you start to feel like even though they are painting the brother as a character who's trying to improve himself and someone that you're supposed to feel sympathy for, you're watching the show and you start to think, do they actually think they're not painting him in a good light? Like because he's doing things that are kind of, he's kind of being a dick basically, and you're watching this like, do they think that he's a bad guy when they're writing the script, and that she shouldn't forgive him, and that's the point they're trying to make? Like are they trying to paint it as she's right, and she's the good guy here, and he's the bad guy when all he did was protect all of them? I mean, he was the hero of the first season, and I'm watching it like, okay, so is the point just to drag this guy through the mud and have everyone laugh at him? Because he's the only character I'm sympathizing with in the entire show. Like, I don't sympathize with Iron Fist because he's so wishy-washy that he never gets anything done, and he lets bad things happen that shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, at one point he's actively working with mob bosses, and I'm just like, no, what are you doing?
Yikes! Really?
Well, it's not as bad as what happened in Luke Cage. At the end of Luke Cage, they kind of imply that Luke Cage becomes a mob boss, which, after everything that happened, you're kind of like, this doesn't follow from his character in the show. But then in Iron Fist, he's like working with mob bosses to try and get them to work out their differences with other mob bosses, so the streets aren't awash with blood, basically. And he does a horrible job of it. And there's too many other motivating factors where people are trying to make this happen. So, he was kind of set up to fail to begin with. But then he starts questioning every single step he takes to the point where it just paralyzes him, and you're like, my god, how is this a hero? Meanwhile, the brother is trying to patch everything together between all these different people while dealing with a drug problem, while dealing with a bunch of people that are trying to ruin him and his company and hurt people he loves. And on top of that, it's like the one thing the guy's looking for is the one thing that he cannot actively have. And you're just like, why wouldn't I sympathize with this character? It's like you can show him using drugs all you want. He's still the best character in the show.
Yikes.
And I'm really not sure, because I'm sure that more than one writer was working on this, and I'm really not sure. It feels like there were two opposing forces working on his storyline in the show. One that wanted to make him out to look like a complete bad guy, and the other that wanted to make it a redemption story. And the redemption story was winning, hand over fist. Hand over iron fist.
I was just gonna... You got it.
So let's talk about where the show spiraled out of control.
Okay.
The bad guy's plot is to do this ceremony using an old bowl, some blood, and some tattoo artists who I'm sure have their own thing going on in Marvel Comics that they didn't really explain in the show anywhere. They just show up and they do their thing, and then they become important for like 2 minutes to fix things, and that's all you really get about them. So they don't like... It's like they pulled something... I got the distinct feeling that they pulled something out of the comic books and put it in the show so that anyone that knew about it could be like, oh, they put them in there. That's cool. But if you don't know anything about the comics, they basically presented you with these characters where it's like, okay, well, what else is there to them? Are they? What else can you tell me about them? Can they flesh out who they are and why they can do this thing that they do? And they don't give you any of that. It's like in Star Wars, The Force Awakens, when they say that they'll tell you about they'll tell you how that creepy, what the heck was she? That creepy nectarine that replaced Yoda. She pulls out Luke Skywalker's lightsaber, and she's like, "Oh, I'll tell you how I got this another time, but there's no time." And then like you never actually get that story anywhere. Like even in the second movie, it was like I'm watching this and I'm like, what happened to that character? Because they're not going to go back to her, are they? There was no reason to. She didn't really, like, she wasn't like Yoda where she was a mentor to anyone. So there was no reason to go back to her. So I'm watching the movie. I'm like, they're not getting back to her. They're never going to tell us how she got that lightsaber, are they?
Yeah.
And it was like that. They just dragged these characters in, and they told you just enough about them to make you want to hear more. And then they don't do anything with them. So it's like, okay, so is that just how we're going to operate from now on, Marvel? Is that how these shows are going to work? Because they do. They keep like throwing crap at you, and they've tried to fit so much going on into Iron Fist that they couldn't even keep track of who the main character was.
Right.
And it reached...
They couldn't even keep track of what kind of story his story was supposed to be.
Yeah, and they reached the zenith when the bad guy steals the Iron Fist power. So now Danny Rand isn't even the Iron Fist anymore. I didn't think that it could get any worse, and then they actively said, hey, Justin, Danny Rand's not even the Iron Fist. He just doesn't even have that power anymore. There's like no purpose for him in this universe at all anymore.
Awesome.
And then, like the lack of soundtrack at the end of the movie The Keep, the biggest slap in the face comes when he's like, I don't even want the power back. And he tells another character that she should take the power of the Iron Fist. I'm just like, oh my god.
It's Justin, it's her turn.
No, that's exactly what it was, though. People can try to explain it to me a million different ways. I don't even care if this storyline happened in the comic. I refuse to believe that the only reason this didn't happen was because Colleen was a popular female character in the first series, which blows my mind because that means people had to actually like the first season. But like people liked her character for some reason, even though she had no real good development. It was like she was a good guy when she showed up. It wasn't like she worked for the Hand and slowly became the good guy. She was doing things for the Hand that were secretive and manipulative, but she thought she was the good guy while she was doing it. And so she didn't really develop past that point.
Uh-huh.
And then it's just like, out of nowhere, Danny Rand says, you're worthy of the Iron Fist. And it's like, what did she do to be worthy of the Iron Fist? She didn't do anything. And then she's actively training him to fight the bad guy. It's like, wait, what? Why is she is training him to fight the bad guy that he has already beaten in a contest to prove who the greatest fighter in the entire world is. And now she, Scrub from the organization The Hand, she's like a grunt for The Hand.
Yeah.
She's not like the top general of The Hand or anything. She's just some nobody. That she had a teacher in the first season from The Hand that they had to fight.
Yeah.
So she's not their best fighter. And now she's training him to fight the bad guy.
Maybe she has some kind of special experience that allows her to know how to fight the bad guy?
No, the only character that had that was another one that they weren't sure if they wanted her to be a bad guy or a good guy in the show. It was some character from the comics that has a split personality, who is like,
oh, great.
On the one hand, a pacifist and a nice person, and on the other hand, a mercenary soldier. And so, like, she's the one that ends up kidnapping the Iron Fist, and has, you know, she's scouted the Iron Fist. She knows how to fight them, which is a bunch of crap, because all of her fighting involves close combat with the Iron Fist, which everyone else is like, oh, well, now that the bad guy has the Iron Fist, you don't want to get anywhere near him. Well, okay, so it was okay when Danny Rand had it. It was like, oh yeah, I know how to fight the Iron Fist, and she's like got cords and ropes and like garroting equipment that she's going to use to fight Danny Rand, but then she's got a gun on her back the whole time. It's like, why wouldn't you just shoot him with a tranquilizer? He's not bulletproof like Power Man. He has fists, but she takes him out in one-on-one, hand-to-hand combat and delivers him to the bad guy so the bad guy can steal his powers. And then when she realizes that she made a mistake, she decides to help Danny Rand fight the bad guy, the powered-up bad guy now. And he's like, well, you beat me, so you would be a help against the bad guy.
Uh-huh.
It's like, so what? You two are both going to go in hand-to-hand combat against this guy? Which isn't what happens, because they have to have Danny Rand fight him. But the plot revolved around them tranquilizing him. She, at one point, has a scoped rifle, a scoped assault rifle that she's using to hunt the bad guy. Like, the bad guy shows up at a building and she just starts taking shots at him. And so he's got to hide behind things. It's almost like the inverse.
Like the end fight of the last... Yeah.
Yeah, so she's the one actively fighting the bad guy, and the bad guy is like, oops, I didn't count on bullets. I guess I'm not the bad guy I thought I was.
I could not have foreseen this.
It's just ridiculous. It's like, why didn't you use a tranquilizing dart against Danny Rand? Like, why did you put yourself through all this training and scouting to learn how to fight the Iron Fist if you're a trained mercenary and you could just stick a dart in him? But, like, it was so funny, because the reason Danny Rand goes to fight the bad guy, he takes a syringe with him, and he's going to, in the middle of a fight, tranquilize this guy.
Uh-huh.
No! Because they want to catch him and reverse the ceremony to now give the Iron Fist power to this other woman that is apparently worthy for no reason. And I don't know, I mean, I would have thought that part of being worthy would at least have been proving that you were on the level of fighting that Danny Rand was on.
Yeah.
Or that someone from the temple is. But, like...
Or that Danny Rand is hypothetically on, even though we never actually get to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, and she just becomes that out of nowhere. It's like they don't even mention... They don't give you any indication that, oh, from the time they met, when she clearly wasn't as good a fighter as the Iron Fist, to now, somehow she is superior to the Iron Fist and is more deserving of the power. And
did he stop training in the off-season?
Well, no. He was actively training and using the Iron Fist to its greater potential, which was a problem, apparently. Like he couldn't control his rage. It was so stupid. They did this thing in Luke Cage. There was an episode in Luke Cage where Iron Fist shows up.
Yeah. And
he shows up specifically because Luke Cage is having these anger issues, and he's not, like, as the Iron Fist put it, he's not centered on himself. So he shows up and he tells him he just needs to he needs to find himself, and he's like telling him he should meditate and all these other things. It's like, are you not using your own advice? Like we would have assumed from everything that happened in Luke Cage that you are the type of person that is doing these things himself. Like the Iron Fist comes off in that episode, which is the greatest that they ever used, the greatest use they ever had for the character that they've created in this television show, is his cameo on Luke Cage. That was him at his best. And yet, in his own show, he's suddenly got all these anger issues where he can't control himself, and now there's some crap about, oh, well, the dragon that gives you the Iron Fist it's like taking me over or something. It's like, well, like I half expected that...
This sounds so horrible.
Well, I half expected that Luke Cage was going to show up and be like, hey, remember when you came and helped me? I need to give you some of your own advice. But, like, that didn't happen. And it's even worse than that, because, like, on the one hand, they're pulling stuff out of the comics and not explaining it to us and expecting us to know it. But on the other hand, they're ignoring the fact that he was clearly a calm and centered person himself when he was with Luke Cage, and pretending that didn't happen, and like just having the Iron Fist show run as its own thing without acknowledging that happened, and really creating this dichotomy in his character that doesn't make any sense.
Are the shows happening on some weird timeline where, like, Iron Fist happens 2 years before Luke Cage or some garbage like that?
Well, I thought that at first, and then, the cop character that shows up, she has a robot arm, which she was given in the course of that series. So no, it's not the timeline being messed up.
Well, no, but Iron Fist could happen after, right? Like, Iron Fist could be happening.
No, because Danny Rand is the one that gave her the robot arm before he shows up to talk to Luke Cage.
Oh.
So this is like fitting perfectly in the timeline.
These are contemporaneous events.
Yeah, he visited him before the problems in his own city.
Wonderful.
And add that to the fact that, like, they start focusing on so the woman that they want to give the Iron Fist power to is Colleen. She's like this samurai swordsman. She ran her own dojo that they turned into their home, and then they're going to turn it into a dojo again. The characters do not. These are the most fickle characters ever, and so like she's a sword fighter, and the cop.
Wait, what does she need the Iron Fist for?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think she needs it because she resonated well with audiences, and it would mean that a woman gets to have the power of the Iron Fist. I really think that, like, I can't think of any other reason other than it's some progressive thing that they wanted to put in the show where it's like, oh, look, now the girl has the superpowers of the boy, and he doesn't have them anymore. Ha ha ha. And it's like, well... Why would you destroy the story for that? And
because it's not about story, it's about
even
fulfilling the fantasies of strange people.
I mean, it really is. I mean, they did, like, the moment that Misty, the cop, shows up, they start focusing on them more than anyone else in the show. And they start giving them all these fight scenes and having them going around and doing investigating and everything. And then, like, every time Danny Rand investigates something, the cop lays into him about, oh, you shouldn't be doing this. And you can't take her character seriously at all. Like, for some reason, people love her, but she's a walking contradiction. She's constantly telling people, I can't ignore this as a cop. And then, like, in the very next scene, she's like, well, I got to ignore this because I'm friends with these people.
Awesome.
And, like, they don't acknowledge that she's doing that in the show either. It's maddening. It's not a thing where in her head she's debating it. Like, 1 minute.
Do you think the writer had a split personality?
Well, it would be more than one, certainly.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're just trying to follow so much. And the thing was, I could be entirely wrong about the whole social justice angle where it's like, let's take the power away from the male and give it to the female. I could be wrong about that, but that's even worse, because if that's not what they were doing, that means that all of that was setting up for the third season, and and that's probably what's really happening, and that terrifies me. I'm not just saying that because it's so stupid, because I haven't told you the rest of what they do with that yet. Like the show ends with Danny Rand beating he doesn't even beat the bad guy. It's Colleen that ends up laying out the bad guy at the end, and then she gets the power of the Iron Fist, and then Danny Rand and the brother, once again, who has to say, like the brother has this great scene. His name is what is it? Ward Meacham.
Okay.
And he has this great scene at the end of the show. Now, at this point in the show, Danny Rand no longer has the Iron Fist. They almost end the series without him even having the power of the Iron Fist. He's not even the Iron Fist anymore.
Right.
And he's going on a journey to find something. It was set up for the next season. I don't even remember what it was. They're looking for a person, or they're following a trail. And and on the way he's going to find out who he is, because apparently he didn't know who he was, despite the fact that he trained he trained for 10 years at this monastery from the time he was a child to become the greatest warrior in all of legend. And but like he couldn't like find himself in any of that, I guess, so it doesn't matter now. Plus he's not even that anymore, so whatever.
Awesome.
But his brother shows up at the end, and he's just like, he has this scene where he's just like, hey, I'm going with you, I'm going to help you. And it's just like, wow, that's the only semblance of a character with heart anywhere in this show. The rest of the cast, the entire time, all they're doing is belittling each other. And like, Danny Rand spends most of the time hating himself and being belittled by everyone else. But he's not the one belittling anyone else. He's just like belittling himself the whole time.
Yeah.
And so like everyone is on this hate fest, and then at the very end, the brother shows up, and he's the one character who's like, I got your back. And it's just like, wow, he really is the only good character in this show.
You're not supposed to like him. He has flaws.
I think that was the word. That was probably what I hated about Colleen more than anything. By the end of the series, it's like they had taken all of the flaws that she had from the first series away. They just didn't count anymore. She was just this perfect being who was worthy of the Iron Fist and was doing all the right things and all these good things to protect people. And she had this cop on her right arm that was helping her do all of these things. And it was like watching two people where it's like, one of them is really wrong about something, but they've got like this angel on their shoulder that's whispering reassurances in their ear, like, no, everything you do is good, you're doing okay, everything's fine, and what you're doing is right. It's just like this constant confirmation. Well, like, they're saying nice things, so they're the angel on the shoulder, but the things they're saying are an outright lie, so they're also a devil on the shoulder at the same time.
Nice. That's just wonderful.
And then, as if it couldn't get any worse. By the way, you might notice that I haven't mentioned any other fight scenes. It's because there weren't any kung fu fight scenes in this one. Like, there was the one with the one guy who was doing kung fu in the last one. In this season, there were a bunch of like brawls, and most of them didn't even have Danny Rand in them. And then he had like one-on-one. It looked like an amateur karate match between him and the main him and the main villain.
Wow.
And then at the end of the show, what are you left with? So this woman has the Iron Fist now, and this cop character is just hanging around. I don't even know why she was still there, but she was. And then Danny Rand takes off. He just leaves, and the brother goes with him. And so, like, I'm guessing the Rand Corporation is being run by some empowered secretary by now. I'm sure that's where they'll go with that in the next season. And then you finish watching the show, and I don't remember if it was after the credits or before, but at the very end, they give you one more scene of Danny Rand and the brother hunting down this person, and this is clearly going to be the bad guy or something for the next season. Well, maybe not the bad guy, because the shows are not clear about who the bad guys are anymore. At one point, I thought the split personality character was going to end up being the main villain, and she ends up being kind of one of the heroes, I guess, but still evil. But they're hunting this person down who's going to have something big to do with the next season. And the brother is talking to someone at a bar. It's like he's clearly shaking down some gangster for information. And he's just demanding that they tell him. And he says all this stuff that he couldn't possibly know unless he's been investigating them. So the gangster gets suspicious and he starts to get angry. And so he's got his muscle behind him. And he's like, he's like, Hey, Bobby, take care of this guy. And so he's like, well, you're not going to deal with me. You're going to deal with him. And then he points to Danny Rand, and Danny Rand stands up in his most Chris Pratt look ever. I forgot to mention this. So they pick this guy because he looks like Iron Fist, supposedly.
Okay.
And in the first season, his look stays the same. When you see him again in Luke Cage, he's got like shorter cut hair. You can't even tell it's curly anymore because it's like buzz cut and everything. And he's grown out this like scruffy beardness going on. And and it's like, wait, are they changing his look when that's kind of what they picked this horrible non-martial artist for?
Of course.
And then the second season shows up, and he still looks like that.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my god, it's like they're actively trying to make every single lead male actor look like Chris Pratt now. I mean, it's like you set them side by side, and you're like, he's scrawny, he's Chris Pratt. That's who he is.
Nice.
He's just a scrawny Chris Pratt. And so like we can replace him now, right? We can find
obviously
someone with golden curly locks that can actually fight now. I'm sure there's at least one somewhere out there.
Sure, there's got to be.
But you know, so he's got this look the whole time, and then by the end of it, it's just like he's got this scene where he stands up at this bar and he's going to fight this giant guy. Which, by the way, you don't get to see that fight. That's where the season ends. But he stands up.
What? No. Hold on. What?
Now they're just teasing fights. They're not even going to give us the fights anymore. They're just going to tease them and then cut to something else. But this is kind of the teaser for the third season, too. So you're not even expecting there to be a fight. But he stands up and he's wearing like a trench coat, like a duster or something, I think. Again, the show is so bad that I might just have hallucinated this, but he's wearing something really weird. And he pulls two guns out, and I'm like, what? What are you doing, show? My God.
Go home, show you're drunk.
I was dying. I was like, I started sliding off the couch in one of those silent laughs where the noise just isn't coming out yet. And it starts to turn into this squeal. And he just pulls out these guns like he's the Shadow or something. And he points the guns at this guy, and this guy fires at him, and then the guns start to glow like the Iron Fist, and I'm like, no. And he fires the guns, and the bullets come out glowing golden. They're Iron Fist bullets. And
oh my god.
And the two bullets that he fires intersect and hit the bullet coming at him in this slow motion Matrix-like scene.
Oh, God.
And my first question is, if you're that good a shot, why did you need to shoot both guns at the same time? He's like one-handing these pistols like some kind of moron. And like firing two bullets at the exact same location. And then he puts his guns away and he's like, I wouldn't do that again or something like that. And that's how the season ends. It ends on that crappy one-liner after you see that. And it's just like, were there actually people that saw that and weren't laughing at it? Like, could there possibly have existed anyone who watched that and was like, whoa, that's cool. I can't wait to see the next season.
Yeah, right.
Such a trash heap of a show.
This is garbage fire.
It actively does everything it can to make me hate it. It actively pursues removing the hero from the show. It actively makes you hate people because of how they're treating the one person who's trying to be a good person but has problems that none of the other characters are willing to help this character with his problem, and he's helping everybody. They're introducing characters that they're not going to explain, and they're expecting that, and they're bit characters too. Like, I can tell that they're bit characters from the comics because it's like if I were to find out what they were in, I'm sure if I looked them up on Wikipedia that they would have had like a couple of minor roles and maybe done one or two cool things in the comics. And then like, so are you baiting me to try and get me to read comics only to make me hate you for it because these characters aren't even really in the comics?
Yeah, right.
And then it's they're pursuing a policy of giving me fight scenes with characters I don't care about in lieu of the hero. They're not
Of
building
course.
on the story of the Iron Fist at all. Like, what is Kung Lung? What is the Iron Fist? Who is the dragon?
Kung Lung is a city that got destroyed off screen in order to produce a motivation for the second season to happen.
And it's like, I know that people are going to say, well, they're going to get to all that in the third season, but like, you got to build something. You can't have an entire season where there's no forward movement and then expect me to just go along with it because on the promise that you're going to give me something in the next season. That's a bunch of crap. It's like,
Yeah.
first off, why do you want that under your belt? Why do you want that on your resume? I produced this crap. And would you excuse it on your resume? Like, oh yeah, I was really proud of that crap I produced because it led into this other thing that was okay. But because the other thing was okay, that makes the crap good too. So you've got to give it points here and here.
I don't think that's how that works.
Yeah, no, crap is crap, and this show is a big steaming pile of it. And
Is a dumpster fire.
dumpster fire does not do justice to what this is. There's got to be. I mean, I don't.
Toxic dumpster fire. Not enough? Still not enough?
No, it's not. The movie was. It was like watching television erect another Auschwitz in front of me. It hurt so much. Why do I keep doing this to myself? Why do I keep watching shows I know are gonna? I knew it was gonna be crap going into it. Like when I watched the first one.
Of course.
When I watched the first season, I didn't know. I was like on the edge of my seat. Like, oh boy, I've waited 4 years for this. I am dying to see me some Iron Fist, and then they gave me that. And then the second season comes along, and I know what to expect. Why did I suffer through it? You know why? Because we're doing this now. That's the only reason. I remember holding the remote in my hand and saying, I don't have to do this. Is there any compelling reason to do this? Like, I could just watch BoJack Horseman again and pretend I watched Iron Fist.
Yeah, there you go.
And I thought about it, and I said, no, because it's going to be so bad that I'm going to have to tell Rudy about it, and that's the only reason that I got through that show. There was not a single episode that was good. There was nothing really good that happened. The best things that happened were these slightly better than mediocre moments of character development for the character that they don't really have in the show that much, that you're not supposed to care about. That some desperate writer in a back room somewhere hiding in a closet is really hoping to get across some redemption story with, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through the third season. Like where do I take it from here?
It sounds like you should stop watching the show.
Or television in general.
Well, television in general might be a little bit of a bridge too far. I mean, BoJack Horseman is on television, so like I would say don't completely give up on it. But like, it sounds like these Marvel shows are just like Daredevil was one of the first ones, right? Like it was
the
really
first
early
one.
It was the first one. It was really good. And everything from that has just been like a death spiral.
Yeah.
I think it's time to eject from the death spiral. That's what I'm going to say.
I don't think I'm going to watch the next Jessica Jones or Luke Cage. I'll probably watch the third Iron Fist just so we can do this again when it happens.
Yeah.
Because that's the cream of the crop for bad. That's if you're going to watch it because it's bad and because you want to talk about how bad it is, that's the one to go to.
Right.
I mean, and the last Jessica Jones was atrocious, and it still wasn't as bad as this.
Right.
I mean, that show, I don't even think that show really had a villain. I'm trying to remember, like her mother was supposed to be the villain, I think, of the show because she had some mental problem.
Wait. Hold on. So the father of the main character is the villain in the first Iron Fist.
Yeah.
And the mother of Jessica Jones is the...
Oh, wait, no, the father is not the father of the Iron Fist. He's the father of the brother and sister that are in charge of Iron Fist's company.
But I thought that... Okay, so never mind. I was going to say, maybe it's just a bunch of people with, like, parent issues that are writing these.
I mean, maybe, but like, I'm going to go ahead and spoil a whole bunch more that nobody cares about. Jessica Jones Part 2 was probably, it might have been a bigger pit of nothing happening than Iron Fist. It wasn't as bad, but there was seriously like, oh, someone's killing people, and Jessica Jones is quote unquote investigating it, because these characters never actually do the things that their characters apparently were premised on in the comics. But she's investigating, and she finds out that her mother has powers like she has, so she's really strong, but she also has some mental problem where she like snaps and just kills people and can't control herself. And her mental problem is the bad guy of the show, as best I can determine. Like, because at first Jessica Jones is determined to bring her mother to justice, which she does, but then her mother breaks out of prison after Jessica Jones helps kill a prison guard that was abusing her or being mean to her or something. And then it's like her mother kind of kidnaps her, but I don't quite understand how that happened. There's this weird thing where her mother is like, "Oh, I'll hurt all the people you love" or something. And there's a whole bunch of weird blackmail and like, well, we can't really do anything about her except kill her, but she's my mother, so do I really want to kill her? And it's Jessica Jones waffling again and not really getting anywhere with her character. And then it turns into a thing where it's like, okay, now they're on the run from the cops. Are we going to start having some semblance of a plot here? Where it's like there's a problem and someone has to solve it, but like we have to figure out how that happens. That never happens in Jessica Jones. There's never any real storyline that you're following to completion. It's just her mother has mental problems. She can't decide whether or not to kill her own mother. And at the end of the show, Jessica's best friend shows up and kills her mother for her because she wouldn't be able to do it. Even though at that point her mother is just on the run with her, and they're just trying to figure out if maybe we can make things work out. That's seriously all that happens. There's no conflict other than I have mental problems and sometimes kill people, and it's just the cops hunting for her mother after she breaks out of prison. And supposedly kidnaps Jessica Jones. I don't know.
Awesome.
It was so stupid that I can't even remember exactly how it went down. Like, I think the mother at first, like, kidnaps her and tries to drag her along to escape with her. And they're going to go live on a beach or something somewhere, but then the feds catch up to them, as they obviously would, because they're just making a mess of everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, at what point in this show was I supposed to think that Jessica Jones was being any sort of even anti-hero? You know, she didn't do anything that was helping anyone, really. There was no progress in the Jessica Jones storyline moving forward. All they really had to go on was talking about her problem with the bad guy that she killed in the first season, and how that's like mental anguish for her now. And like, if it was supposed to be a show about people's mental trauma and psychological problems, it did it in the most poorest. It did it in the poorest light and the most distasteful way that I can possibly think of. Because like, if you take the show at face value on that premise, then the show was saying, well, if people really have mental problems, the only way to deal with it is to put a bullet in their head.
And I think that's the perfect moral for this story. The end.
Indeed.